Entering our second season of Blood Time, we want to thank not only our phenomenal and remarkable individuals that were our guests, but also the support, the incredible support that we have had throughout the community, not only locally, but nationally. What you can absolutely put to bed as guaranteed the second season of Blood Time are more remarkable individuals, more transformative stories, and more Blood Time moments. Please give a listen to the second season, for we are all blood. Coach Cimarroni here. Love to all. This is Coach Cimarroni for Next Level Continuing Education. Next Level brings unique education to real estate professionals and real estate investors on how to get money effectively and efficiently into real estate investments. Next Level Continuing Education has ditched the traditional continuing education platform. Gone are the days of listening to boring content in a stuffy classroom setting. Come jump on a Zoom call whenever you find it comfortable and learn how to expand your real estate portfolio. Next Level CE brings unique content across Ohio and the Midwest to teach real estate investors how to become their own bank using the infinite banking concept to acquire more properties quickly. Call Ryan M. Miller, the CE specialist, at 330-933-8231 or click on the link in our show notes. That's Ryan M. Miller, CE specialist, 330-933-8231 or our show notes. The link is where you go. Thank you. Hey, this is Coach Cimarroni here, Blood Time. The next episode with a fantastic guest on the phone, Yoshi Nakamura. Yoshi, welcome.
What's going on? How are you?
Oh man, it's so good to hear your voice and so good to get you finally on this show. And I followed you since you were a young man, and in that storied St. Ed's program, we had your head coach Greg Urbis on back in season 1, and now to get a superstar like you on in both not only the wrestling but the judo world, and then you get a brother in the NFL. What the heck? I mean, it's amazing, Yoshi, what your family has accomplished, what you've accomplished, and you went to school at a pretty crappy school, Penn.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those schools that, I guess,
Yeah.
was okay.
Yeah, Wharton School, just a piker's dream, right? So you were a 3-time Ivy champ, weren't you?
Yeah, 3-time EIWA champ.
Okay, and then you were 2-time state champ over at St. Ed's, and
That's
then
right.
you were a Division I All-American twice. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yeah. What did you take? 7th and 3rd?
Yep, that's correct.
So tell me a little bit about what got you. I mean, I've heard some amazing stories about your dad. I mean, I don't think your dad was over 5'1", 5'2", 5'3", something like that. I mean,
He was actually 5'8", so we were
Okay.
actually, my dad and I were about the same size. Although if you had asked anybody, they would have told you that he was probably 6'3".
Gotcha.
The way he handled himself, and how he, number one, his level of experience and his degree of black belt in judo, which he was an 8th degree black belt.
Wow.
But let's not cut my mom short either.
Hey,
mom
Tiger
is
Mom, right?
5'2", 5'3".
Yeah.
She was a 4th degree black belt in judo. So let's be very clear, there was no messing around at home.
I get you. So Yoshi, when either one of them asked you to take out the garbage, it was always yes.
What do you mean? Ask us to take out the garbage jar is already out.
That's right. It was expected, right? It was a foregone conclusion.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, it's just amazing to hear what your family has accomplished, what you've accomplished, and there's obviously transition between judo and transformation between judo and wrestling. Talk a little bit about that foundation that you got from those martial arts and what it meant to you as a young man, and then obviously as now a businessman.
Sure. Judo really laid the foundation for my life. That plus, our core family values.
Sure.
And my father was an 8th degree black belt in judo. Came from Japan, trained at the Kodokan.
Yep.
Really, really interesting story. My father actually trained way, way, way back in the day under Tadaki Hata's father in Japan at the Kodokan.
Wow! Now you're talking about judo and wrestling royalty.
Yes.
Wow.
So, when you sit back and think about that,
yeah.
And I'm going to get to the later part of that story about how my father ended up in Ohio.
Right.
My father traveled the world. He coached the 1964 lightweight team for the Olympics for Japan.
Wow.
And that was the year judo was introduced to the Olympics in Tokyo.
Sure.
And then traveled the world. Taught in Europe, Egypt, South America, Central America, and then eventually came to the United States.
Right.
My father loved the United States, and being able to travel and teach something that he loved the most in judo, he fell in love and decided to stay. And he traveled around doing clinics at different judo schools and universities.
That's fantastic.
And actually, on the tour, met my mom. My mom is, as mentioned, a 4th-degree black belt in judo.
Wow.
She her whole family did judo, and she's from Rhode Island. So
what is your father and your mother's name, and where did your father come from in Japan?
Sure. My father is Professor Ryozo Nakamura, and my mom is Karen Nakamura.
Wow.
My father is from the Shimane area in Japan.
Okay.
The western side.
Gotcha.
And my mom, obviously, from Rhode Island, as mentioned, Woonsocket. But, yeah, my mom and her brothers, my uncles, did judo. They loved the sport, and they ended up meeting. And my mom, there's actually some interesting video floating around of my mom doing clinics with my dad.
That's
and my dad using my mom as a throwing dummy, by the way.
Oh, my God. Now, that's true love.
It's one of those things you're like, maybe this day and age somebody might look at that and say, wow, is that borderline abuse, or is it? What are they doing? That's actually that very tongue-in-cheek.
Yep, of course.
But my mom loved judo as much as my dad did, and probably loved it even more because of my dad. So
that's awesome. What a love story. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how did they end up in Northeast Ohio? My goodness, how lucky did we get these superstars?
I think it's a great question because you would think you end up in a big city or the West Coast where judo is really, really popular.
Sure.
So what happened was, as my father was traveling around the United States, different business people were suggesting, hey, why don't you come to Little Rock, Arkansas, or why don't you come to Pennsylvania? I'll set a gym up for you. You can run a judo school, and you can teach self-defense. You can do this. You can do that.
Yeah.
And that had come up in conversation a number of times, and so. They took one shot. I believe it was down in Arkansas.
Okay.
It didn't quite work out, and then so they went up to Cleveland. That was kind of a similar situation, and eventually my father was just like, you know what? I'm just going to open up my own judo school. That way, I don't have to answer to anybody. Run my own business, and then he also worked at the local county jail, the sheriff's department in Lorain County.
Yeah.
And he taught self-defense, state highway patrol troopers, local law enforcement, and then also was a corrections officer at the county jail.
How lucky and fortunate were those officers to have your dad there? That is fantastic. And it's an interesting story because my mother's Armenian. I'm an Arslanian. My mother's an Arslanian, so I have half Armenian blood. And with an immigrant story, I mean, it's interesting that he would end up here. Your parents would end up here because typically, like with the Armenians, there's always a big community, like in Fresno and Detroit and in Boston, and so Japanese Americans, mostly the big communities are out on the West Coast. So no matter where you're going to end up as a Japanese American, immigrant family, right? You're going to be rare, and so you're really rare in Northeast Ohio. I don't think there's a big Japanese American community here, is there?
No, actually, and this brings me to that point I was going to mention, or I said I was going to mention earlier.
Yeah.
My father and mother moved maybe no more than 18 minutes from Coach Hata and his wife, Susan Hata.
That's fantastic.
And he lived in Oberlin, Ohio, and we moved to Elyria, Ohio.
Wow.
And they just reconnected. And, really, I have to give a lot of credit to that relationship because, when my father passed away when I was 13, my brother was 5, Haruki was 5, my sister was 3.
Oh.
We struggled.
Sure.
We had, going from two incomes to one, we had, no money. And
Sure.
thank God my mom had, she had gone back to school a few years after I was born to get an associate's degree and working at St. John West Shore Hospital.
Right.
But thank God she did that. My mom has always been an oak, hardworking, and, 100% dedicated to her family.
That's your original blood time, Karen. We love Karen. We absolutely love Karen.
There's a certain set of circumstances that just seem lucky,
Sure.
and call it good karma because who my mom was or who my dad was. But we moved close to, we were 15, 20 minutes away from Coach Hada and his family.
Right.
Coach Hada had introduced me to wrestling when I was a kid. Actually, Coach Hada's two sons, Robert and Ben, both did judo with my father.
Yeah, I've had a nice opportunity to chat with. Yeah, I've had a nice opportunity to chat with Robert. Great guy, really smart guy too. Robert Hada.
Two amazing families, two amazing St. Ed's families.
Right.
And Coach Hada, when all of that stuff went down, when my dad passed, he was there, to help us out and be there for us. And, he actually said, when this was. I was in the 7th grade, and I was playing basketball and running track and doing other sports, baseball in the summer, and still doing judo. He, my 8th grade year, he said, you should think about doing wrestling.
Right.
I know I tried it when I was a little kid. I didn't like it. So
okay.
He said, but you should come to St. Ed's. Ben and Robert are there, and St. Ed's is the best. And,
right.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember going to shadow St. Ed's.
Sure.
And they're like, you should come to practice. I'm like, Coach, I was like, I don't really wrestle. Coach.
Right.
I'm not gonna go to practice. He said, no. He's like, we talk. Yeah, he spoke in some broken. It's okay. You're good.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting the black and grays from Eddie and Eddie Jane. And
sure.
Getting a pair of shoes and getting on the mat. And I remember just kind of wrestling around, and really all I did was just try to throw people because judo and wrestling are very similar.
Yep.
And I remember after practice, Coach Jane saying, "Hey, Sam Niger, come here, Sam, come here."
Yeah.
Hey, this is Yoshi. He's like does judo, and Eddie and Mark and the boys took judo from his dad. But he's gonna get into wrestling. He's gonna come to St. Ed's next year. I'm like, I am coming to St. Ed's next year. Okay. So he's like, just work with him on some stuff. Now, mind you, I'm probably standing straight up and down. My hands are out, extended,
right,
in a wrestling stance.
Right.
And Sam's like, okay, yeah, sure. And he's kind of like, so what do you like to do? I was like, I really don't do wrestling. I do judo.
Yes.
Goes, okay. So show me a high crotch, or show me a high crotch. And it's like I kind of reach down and I do an inside head single. He's like, no, that's a single leg. I'm like, oh. He's like, okay, do it like this. So actually, I remember that vividly. Sam Nider was actually the first one to show me how to do a high crotch.
Not a bad guy to show, right? I mean, Sam Nider, my goodness.
Yeah, but that's just scratching the surface of the types of things that you get introduced to, or people you learn from at a place like St. Ed's. And
yep.
I am very grateful for what that school has done for my family, for me, and it's really lucky to have a coach like Coach Urbis to be under. And I remember Jim Kubaki, who I actually just spoke to the other day. He was there. Just a tremendous group of people, a tremendous alumni base, and a lot of love and just a lot of good spirit.
Well, you were so much fun to watch, Yoshi, because of your judo background. Tell me a little bit about that mentality of how you transferred the techniques and the philosophy of judo to our sport, and vice versa.
Well, it's interesting because I actually kind of had to reinvent myself. Because, and this is a big deal because when you train at such a high level in something, so at judo I was a 7-time junior national champion.
Yep.
Won high school nationals once my freshman year.
Okay.
Took 5th at senior nationals. My dad was one of the highest ranking judo instructors in the world.
Right.
Going through, by the way, absolute 100% emotional volatility. My dad died when I was 13, and I'm like, going into high school, I'm like, I'm all over the place. My freshman year, I held it together. He got good grades. My sophomore year, I crashed and burned.
Sure.
Meaning,
Happens.
It just emotionally, it was tough to get through, and I really don't tell a lot of people that because it's very personal, and I think for a long time, for me, you have to, as my dad would say, you have to put on a strong face,
Sure.
show your emotions and be tough, and
yes,
I wore that, and that was quite heavy for a very long time.
Especially at that young age, yes.
And I got in my freshman year. I had a good transition. I wrestled on the green team. I was like 22-3 or something like that.
Right.
So I had a good freshman year. I was wrestling 119. Now the next year, I made the gold lineup, but I was cutting back down to 119. And I was obviously bigger.
Yeah.
And I was cutting too much weight. I was trying to hold it down, which is not healthy when your body's trying to grow. And
it's hard enough. It's hard enough emotionally, right? But then you add the weight. It's really tough.
Exactly, and I didn't know how to truly diet and do it the right way. So at times, my mom's packing me something to eat for lunch, and I'm kind of giving it away at lunchtime, not telling her that I'm not eating at all.
Right.
Which is as hard-headed as tough as you can be. That's a very scary thing, a scary cycle potentially to get into when you're a kid.
Yes.
That. So so what does that lead to? It leads to exhaustion. It leads to your mind isn't operating the right way.
Right.
You're not healthy. And I got hurt. I was at a scrimmage, and a kid, whether he did it on purpose or not, bit my finger. Guys would have these big, and again, I like to think that somebody wouldn't bite your finger in a practice, but sometimes it happens when you're kicking the crap out of them.
Right. Right.
And or maybe you cross-face them too hard and they just don't like it.
Yep.
But anyways, but it happened. I ended up in a hospital with an infection.
Oh, that's horrible.
And I remember I dislocated my shoulder. Just didn't dislocate.
You did not have a good sophomore year, my man.
No.
But you came back. You came back.
Yeah. In the middle of the year, I had a concussion.
My God.
CITs and I remember Coach Leonard and Coach Hatter were in my corner, and I was wrestling a guy, and this is what I remember. I just kind of snapped him down. I go to go behind, and he stands up, and his head, boom, out. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I wake up, and I look up, and I see Coach Leonard, and Coach Leonard was always he was always very serious and could be tough, but sometimes every once in a while to break the ice, he cracks a joke. He goes, You in there?
Hello.
And,
McFly.
And so Coach Hatter and Coach Leonard are sitting there, and the ref goes, I get up and I'm walking around. He goes, hey, you all right? You don't look too good. I'm like, yeah, I'm right. He goes, what's your coach's name? And I'm like, well, which one? I'm like 20. So he's like, all right. He's like, he's okay, let him go. But I went on to lose that match, and then I tried to finish, and I was just out of it. So, the next couple of weeks, I just, didn't practice, and just everything kind of exacerbated itself, and this was getting to year end. So,
right.
I had a tough year, and then in practice, the week before sectionals, I was wrestling with Ricky Walters.
Okay.
And we got into a scramble, and he was taking me down. I tried to do like an elevator or like a cement job and elevate him over, and my leg got caught, and I heard this pop, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good.
Oh.
It's the last thing I need. I ended up losing at districts, and I gave it some time because I didn't realize what had happened, but then all of a sudden my knee started locking up when I was walking in school. Come to find out, I torn the cartilage in my knee too, and had surgery. And I remember this is the transition moment.
Okay.
And this is really important. All of the stuff that I didn't do correctly came to a head, and I was beat up.
Right.
I'm sitting in the stands. I'm watching, my teammates like Brad Clement and others just kick butt at the state tournament. It was my first time ever down to the state tournament.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a newspaper, and I remember seeing, and shout out to Joe Heskey because obviously he's going through his own things.
No, boy. Yeah, we love Joe. We love Joe.
And Nupp and Sonny Marchetti and Brett.
Sure.
Then all our guys, Brad Clement. And I just remember seeing their names in the paper, and I'm like, man, this should be me.
Right.
This should be better.
Right.
And that moment, I made a decision to be a state champ.
That was your cathartic blood time moment. I love it. But you also had a lot of blood time guys before that really supported Yoshi. And we're going to come back and talk about that. But we're going to take a little bit of a break and thank our sponsors. So we will be right back with Yoshi Nakamura.
Defense Soap at defensesoap.com. In the midst of our current health crisis, we at Blood Time want to thank Guy and Gus Seiko and the team at Defense Soap as a beacon of our protection. Body wipes, skin cleansers, bars of soap, shower gels, and disinfectant tablets. All this and more as Defense Soap is on the front line of our protection. Thanks to the Seiko family and their team at Defense Soap. Check them out for all your protection needs during these precarious times. Defense Soap at defensesoap.com.
Our next sponsor, Infinite Search Solutions, is Northeast Ohio's premier recruiting and placement service. They make it easy, fast, and simple to find the right people to help you build the perfect team. I personally know Matt Burns and his team. They will find you the candidates you need. Call them today at 440-249-0485 or visit them on the web at www.in-finite, that's FINITE.com. Matt Burns, thank you so much. We love you, Infinite Search Solutions. And we're back with Yoshi Nakamura. This is Coach Cimarroni Blood Time. Yoshi, we were talking about that transition between sophomore and junior year and what took you from sitting in the stands to being a two-time state champion. And let's get back into that, and then I'd like to talk to you about your college career now and also what you're doing in the business world with those wonderful lessons you learned in the wrestling room at St. Ed's and also at Penn. So talk a little bit about that transformation. What happened to you between the sophomore and junior year?
I made a choice.
Okay.
And it starts with that. In anything you do in life, you make a choice to make a change and, set out to accomplish something.
Right.
And at that point, sitting in the stands, looking at all these other guys and these young guys coming up, and I said, you know what? I should be there. This should be better.
Right.
And I should be better. And so literally that whole summer, I had knee surgery a month later. That whole summer I spent lifting weights, just get myself healthy.
Right.
I did not step on a wrestling mat at all.
Okay.
I hit a growth spurt. I probably put on 25 pounds.
Right.
In that summer. Went from 119 pounds to next season I wrestled 140. I didn't even know it. I didn't even care. I didn't step on a scale.
Right.
And I remember being so driven that I didn't want to feel that way anymore. Okay. And that's a big deal. I think when you reflect on how you feel and then set out to do something about it, it's really important not to hone in on that emotion. But I had held my body, my mind back by what I was trying to do to cut weight. Sure. And do it the way that I was clearly just not healthy. And I just put all that aside and said, how do I relay this foundation, or how do I solidify this foundation of who I am? So you really reinvented yourself, but basically invented yourself that summer. Exactly, because remember, I had done judo up until that point. Sure. And I wrestled for 2 years. Okay. I wasn't a wrestler. Right. And that's a big difference, because so I lift. I want to win a state championship. I'm supposed to get on the mat and wrestle, right? That's not what I did. So right. I learned from my father growing up that mental training and visualization is such an important thing. And Coach Hada is a big believer of that. And I think most of the coaches at St. Ed's are big believers of that. You close your eyes and you see yourself wrestling and see yourself winning. And, Coach Hada actually suggested that, write it down, draw a picture. What does it look like? Yeah. And Coach Hada is an artist. Draw a picture. What does it look like? Yes. And I drew a picture of me standing on a podium. There you go. And as a state champ. And every day, I would get up. I'd do the weightlifting routine. I had these. You remember those old plastic weights with the cement inside that if they broke it,
oh yeah, that was horrible.
And it had like the skinny bar with like the 2 screws on the end of the locks. Anyways, that's the weight. I had like 50 pounds, right?
Wow.
But all I did was lift it as many times as I could in different directions and different ways, and I'd do squats and but I always told myself, anytime I got up and I didn't have anything to do, I'd go lift weights. And there was one time I couldn't sleep, and I'm sure 14, 15 years old, my testosterone's raging, and
oh my God, yeah.
I'm waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. My mom, who was schlepping us to work, or schlepping to work every day, taking care of 3 kids. Yeah, I get up and I start throwing weights around, and we only had a very small 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh my!
And her bedroom was right across the hallway from my bedroom, and she'd hear this clanging at 2 in the morning, and she'd walk in. What are you doing here? I'm lifting weights, Mom. I'm lifting weights. I'm going to be a state champ this year.
Yeah.
And she'd shake her head, and she'd walk back in the other room, and
she goes,
yeah, it's probably not sleep. And I try to finish up and go to bed. She said, go to bed. You're going to wake up the kids.
Yeah.
Because her Ruki and Kimmy were still little.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyways, make a long story short.
Yeah.
Put on 20 pounds. And I did a lot of visualization, and I would literally shadow wrestle in my bedroom by myself.
Fantastic.
And I had a mirror, so I looked at my stance. I tried to fix my stance, but never stepped on the mat that whole summer. And
right.
I didn't want people... I just didn't want to be around anybody as I kind of reshaped myself. And sometimes, that isolation is important because you don't want to hear the noise around you saying, do this, do that. You need to be able to do it your way. You have to get started. And then once you shape your mind the right way, then you can take it to the next level. Shape your mind and body the right way, then you can take it to the next level. So I remember going into preseason training, we would do like team runs and stuff like that. I was probably the worst runner on the team, just given, I don't know, I'm like a dwarf, more dangerous from short distances and long distance runs. And I just remember getting back, being one of the first ones back to the gym, back to the wrestling room, and beating a few of the guys that typically would beat me. And I remember working out with one of the guys who was a drill partner with me the season before. Yeah. And he hadn't gone on the run. He missed it. And so I had my shirt off in the gym, and he goes, "Holy smokes!" He's like, "Dude, how much do you weigh?" Yeah. I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't stepped on a scale." He goes, "Dude, you're big. Like, you probably, like, I'm wrestling 125 this year. Like, you wrestle 119. Like, you probably weigh like 150. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Whatever. And, right. I remember. We started drilling, and I went from getting my butt kicked the year before by a couple of these guys, and I literally was throwing people around the wrestling mat. Love that. And I just right then and there, I'm like, okay, I made the choice, at the state championships the year before that I was going to be a state champ. I did the work that summer. Yes. And now I know I'm going to be a state champ this year. Right. And that was it. And I never looked back. That's fantastic. And so in that transformation, is there anybody that's in your head, anybody that's in your DNA? I mean, obviously your father, some of the coaches, but is there anything that you just knew subconsciously that was who you wanted to be and why? What was your why? The why was, I wanted to make my mom proud. Okay. I wanted to know that I wanted to make my dad proud. Gotcha. This is, it's always emotional for me. I understand. To talk about, but it's homage. It's an homage too. Yeah, yes. But it's also who you are, right? It's your DNA. I wanted to make myself proud too. Sure. I didn't want to be sitting on the sidelines. Gotcha. I wanted to be a champion. So. Gotcha. And you can accomplish that. You accomplished that twice. You were on a great St. Ed's team, and literally, it is the golden era. You mentioned the names, the Heskets, the Marchettis on the other side with Walsh, and then of course Niter and some of the guys that you matriculated with at St. Ed's, plus the coaching staff, incredible Hall of Famers, including the great St. Greg Urbis. That's right. That's right. He is the best. He is the best. But it's really truly, for my family, but for me. Sure. And if you can't at the end of the day hone it into what it is that you want to accomplish, and it's hard. Yep. I've and we we'll get into this a little bit later, but when you start working in the working world or start doing things in life, you do things for your kids, you do things for, your family. There's not a lot of times where you really do things for yourself. And I learned that, from my mom, who took care of us and sacrificed everything. I watched my wife, Amy,
Yes.
Amy Ward, Mike Ward's older sister, but Amy
Sure.
Nakamura.
Okay.
Now,
Love it.
She's, I watch her sacrifice her time to help with our kids. And I see this similarity of how great of a mom she is relative to how great my mom was.
Sure. Well, you had a great role model, and that's who you chose as your partner. So it's a beautiful thing,
And it's you start to realize that, like, at the end of the day, it starts with you. And if you set out to accomplish something, you have to, it has to start there. It's harder to accomplish something it's harder to accomplish something when you're trying to do it for somebody else.
Right.
And I remember when my dad died, we had talked, my dad and I talked about making the U.S. Olympic team in judo, and
sure.
I hung on to that, and that's I wanted to be an Olympic gold medal, and I promised my dad, on his deathbed, I was like, I'm gonna win an Olympic gold medal for you. And as a 13-year-old kid, you don't realize how heavy that is.
Of course.
Especially when you don't have the means or the resources to keep training to do that.
Yes.
And I transitioned into wrestling. So I kind of started to lose this dream of, like, one day I could maybe do this for my dad.
Right.
But then I found wrestling, and then that year I became a state champ. And my mind had shifted. That mentality had shifted of, you know what, like, man, this is a really hard thing to swallow. Like and I was mentioning my sophomore year was a really tough time. That's 3 years after my dad passed. I struggled with, like, I'm going to fail my dad, and there was definitely a fear of failure that I carried with me.
Of course.
But all of that coming to a head, deciding that, hey, you know what, I want to be standing on the podium as a state champion next year, not winning for my dad or winning for anybody.
Well, you're modeling that behavior of you're modeling that behavior of your dad, your mother. You've then transitioned that to model that to your kids, and through your spouse, she's modeling that behavior, and so there's such beauty to that it leads you to a situation where you get to go to Ivy League school.
Yep.
So tell me how that feels to be, an Ivy athlete. I mean, it's incredible. Yoshi.
Well, shout out to my alma mater, University of Pennsylvania, and St. Ed's, because they're Coach Reyna is back at Penn, and
awesome.
He sent St. Ed's Coach Urbis and Coach F. They're sending a few of the guys
right.
over to Penn, and they got a nice little pipeline going. So
that's awesome.
But for me, in making that decision, it actually wasn't easy at first, because after winning my first state championship my junior year, you start getting bombarded with letters, and Big Ten and ACC, all over the place. But for whatever reason, my father, it's another thing my father and I talked about. We talked about going to Ivy League schools,
right,
and going to Princeton or Harvard, and so I told Coach Urbis, I said, Coach, I really want to consider going to an Ivy League school. I have really good grades.
Yes.
I said, I'll be taking my test scores, coming up, but I would really like to consider. And so, Coach Urbis being the best, and he's always on his A game when it comes to getting, his guys to the next level.
No question.
And the nice thing is, Ben Hatta was going to Penn, so it was easy to consider that. But we had, I think, Justin Frito was at Brown.
Right.
Frank Clement was at Columbia.
Right.
We had ties to Cornell. Coach Vedic obviously went there. So it was perfect, because we had this great St. Ed's network tied into the Ivy Leagues. And so once I started considering that, I'm like, wow, you see these things, and you're like, wow, Columbia University, New York City, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Ben's there. But I had to then really dig deeper into what was I looking for.
Right.
And I wasn't sure, because I actually wanted to do engineering first.
Well, you've got the Wharton School right there, which a number of the Beechwood athletes went to. Buddy of mine, Dean Adler, taught there. He actually taught Ivanka Trump. But it's interesting that you have not only all those different areas of expertise, but then you have the Wharton School too. It's crazy how phenomenal that school is.
And exactly that. Coach Reyna came to visit, and he said that he's like, listen, I know you're looking at all these other schools. I know you have scholarship offers to the Big Ten. Coach Urbis and Coach Hatta obviously said that, you wanted to go to an Ivy League school. He goes, this is the best school. He's like, but more importantly, he goes, this is the best combination of academics and athletics. And it clicked.
Perfect.
Like, aha.
Right.
And they had, Penn had just started to, they had been coming up. I think they had beaten Cornell recently in a dual meet, which is a big deal. And,
huge.
Yeah. And he's like, I know you wanted to do engineering. We have a great engineering school. He's like, but like, you kind of mentioned business too. And he said, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I like engineering. I'm not sure what it is that I want to study. He goes, but I definitely, I want to do something in business. And what does that mean? That is such a vague term. And I'm sure Coach Rain is looking at me like,
right.
Wow, this kid, he's got to figure this.
Yeah.
He has to figure out what he wants to do.
Right.
I can just knowing Coach's brain and how it works. I can only imagine what he was saying to himself. But he goes, well, the Wharton School of Business is the #1 business school in the country and the world. Like,
right.
You could do. We have a great wrestling team. And you have the #1 business school in the country. Put those two together. How do you feel about that? And I'm like, done. Like, I want to go to Wharton School.
Yeah.
I want to go to the Wharton School of Business.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but the Wharton School of Business network. Holy cow. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the people that go there and that you can reach out to, or they would know that who you are because of, and then you become an All-American twice. So you're not only on the radar, academically, you're on the radar now. You're an All-American. So tell me what that combination did for you now in the business world, because really Blood Time's about we love the stories about what you've done, athletically and emotionally through that athleticism. But what are you doing in the business world, the real world, that you learned from those rooms, and now what are you taking to the world at large?
You learn a ton. You learn, and I sit on the board of directors of Beat the Streets New York, which is obviously, I think everybody in wrestling community knows Beat the Streets, but
fantastic organization.
Founded by Mike Novogratz, and I'm on the board with Jesse Jansen and John Smith, and a bunch of pretty amazing business professionals and wrestlers that are in the New York community. But you give what wrestling gives, and what you learn is a skill set.
Sure.
What's amazing about wrestling is it's not a handout, right? You have to earn it.
Yep.
And it's like the LeBron James saying, in Cleveland, everything is earned; it's not given.
That's for sure here.
Wrestling is the epitome of that, right?
No doubt, baby. We are a lunchbox city, baby.
The only thing wrestling's giving you is an ass whooping. You don't step up and train.
Exactly.
And you learn that, and in life, and sorry for the profanity, but I feel strongly that you need to use certain words to emphasize this. But in life, you get your ass kicked a lot.
No question.
And look at what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
And I learned that from my sophomore to my junior year in high school. Going from like nothing to state champ.
Yeah.
Going from a great high school to an Ivy League school, #1 business school in the country, in the Wharton School of Business. My sophomore year, very similar situation. I was ranked 7th going into the Nationals at Penn State.
Okay.
Lost my first round match.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's a kid named Griff Powell, who I think a lot of people know from New York. He's pretty tough All-American as well, but multiple time state champ from New York. And I remember Coach Reyna pulling me aside and saying, after I lost my second match, and saying like, hey, what happened, man?
Yeah.
And I just said, I don't know. He goes, all right, here's what you're gonna do. He hands me a sheet of paper, and coach is always good about this. He says, all right, listen, write down how you feel.
Right.
Like what happened.
Right.
I want you to flip it over, and I want you to write down next year this time. I want you to write down what your goals are and how you want to feel.
Right.
And those simple exercises can be genius at times. And I think when you write down that emotion and you get it on paper, and then you write your goal, and then you get how you want to feel down on paper. It's that similar mentality how I switched from my sophomore year to my junior year, sitting in the stands, seeing everybody, get written up in the papers and standing on the podiums, and he's just like, I don't want to feel like the way I feel right now. I want to feel like that.
Yeah.
It should be better. Like I worked hard. I worked hard this year, but it's not.
Yep.
And so, that transition from the wrestling mat to life, you go through those situations. I mean,
sure.
God, everybody's getting kicked while they're down right now, and you got
takes a lot of courage right now to move through the day, right?
You got misinformation everywhere. Like
right.
Social media is such a great thing, and it helps us communicate with each other. Facebook connects our community in a way in which we can relate to and get back in touch with people that we hadn't spoken to in a very long time. Amazing, right?
Right.
Twitter being a social media platform that allows us to get news sources. Amazing, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, like the switch flips, and there's these things have now changed as to what they were intended to be, and now become very manipulative.
Well, technology is a double-edged sword. Always has been, and whatever technology is, it's dependent upon the absolute moral compass of the user.
Yeah, and by the way, like we went through a forced recession.
Yep.
There's a COVID pandemic where people are dying.
Yes.
Right. People get sick and then die. Right. It's not just. And by the way, people are infecting other people. And they don't even know it.
Of course.
And you're like, holy smokes, what just happened? Like our economy is ripping. Right.
Right.
We got jobs coming back overseas, and you're sitting. I'm literally sitting here, and this is my current transition, and it's very similar to the transition I made in high school, transition I made in college, and
yes.
Transition I'm making now. So we had, I worked at Citi for 14 years. Really good career on Wall Street, covering some of our largest hedge funds. I actually ran the hedge fund strategy for Citi on the equity side, on the stock market side.
Fantastic.
Covering multi-billionaire hedge fund clients.
Right.
I had gotten to know Mike No Regrets. He's been a great mentor to me as it relates to
brilliant mind. Brilliant mind. Yeah.
The guy's been a huge supporter of wrestling. But he really took me under his wing, and actually his whole family did, to just give me a pathway in New York City in a way which I don't think a lot of people get a chance to walk down, but you still have to continue to carve your own path while you walk down that path. Walk with them.
Right.
Anyways, but the point is I ended up leaving Citi after 14 years and making a transition to join Galaxy Digital. So I was the global head of sales and business development for Galaxy Digital. Galaxy Digital is the largest and the only publicly traded cryptocurrency merchant bank in the world.
Fantastic.
So I went from taking this old school, stock market or markets mentality, and applying that to help build a new asset class. Literally building a new asset class in cryptocurrencies. Much like commodities became an asset class as it developed in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Cryptocurrency, I think, is very similar. And was there for 2 years. Unfortunately, everything that I had at Citi, I rolled into stock options at Galaxy, and I made a bet. And that bet was, partly on the evolution of this new asset class and industry. Right. Partly on me, and unfortunately, the cryptocurrency market from 2018 to, the subsequent year tanked. And so our stock went public. It went from $5 to $2 immediately. And, I watched a lot of my net worth get singed pretty badly. If not evaporate.
Yep.
And that's a very humbling thing to happen to you, because you never think when you have so much success over your career that you could get kicked like that. Now,
sure.
Now, mind you, things rebounded the next year, so think things have gotten better. But then in the back half of 2019, I had introduced Mike to a private equity team, which Mike ended up becoming an equity partner in, called Durational Capital Partners, and Matthew Bradshaw is a close friend of mine who I grew up in the business with over those 14 years.
Right.
They actually ended up taking a company called Bojangles private, which is kind of like at the Chick-fil-A.
Oh yeah, it's chicken. Southern chicken. That's my nephew's down at Duke. He's the defensive coordinator for Duke, and Bojangles is big down in North Carolina, so I know that real well.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So now I'm in the face of, okay, I had a 2-year run with Galaxy. I have all these massive and important contacts in the industry now, not just from Wall Street, but now the cryptocurrency space, and on the corporate side, because a lot of corporates were coming into the space.
Right.
So I have a high level of expertise about something that that people know nothing about.
Yes.
And it was growing, but now I would say that's much different. My job was to get on the road, speak at conferences, preach the message of what Bitcoin and blockchain is, and obviously then build our trading business.
Yeah, I'm very in tune with that. I was a speaker at Blockland last year, which
that's
is
right.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah, I was a speaker there. So I have a company called The Protocol that does work on the security side. So I feel you. It is definitely an interesting business climate at this moment. So
yeah, so again, wrapping up my second year, and I'm sitting there thinking, why am I? The stock price has rebounded, but like,
right.
Why am I still working for somebody else? Like,
sure,
I have all these relationships, I have all these ties now in the VC world, technology world now, and I have my buddy who's just bought Bojangles. They tried to buy Churchill Downs, didn't work out, but that's all right. They're moving on to other take privates. I'm like, why am I working for? I mean, why don't I try to launch my own business? If there's ever a chance to do it, it's right now.
Sure.
And so Mike and I were having conversations about a few other things, and he kind of threw out. I randomly he goes, you know what? You should go do that Bojangles thing. And what he was referencing was Matthew and I had talked about when they took it private that he wanted to sell a bunch of the corporate stores off of his balance sheet.
Okay.
He owned like 340 on the corporate level, and they wanted to sell those stores down so they could get to a royalty model as opposed to an operating model of these 300 businesses. So I put together an LLC with my brother Haruki, who a lot of people know.
The Baltimore Ravens Haruki, right?
That's right. That's right. The old Cleveland Browns.
Yes. God bless him.
And we formed Naka Capital Partners, and we had intended to just buy let's call it 10 restaurants or whatever.
Right.
But instead, that vision of 10 grew into, hey, maybe we could buy 20, or maybe we could buy 50.
Wow.
Hey, we could build this to be 100 stores because they want to grow.
Right.
And so we went through the process of becoming franchisees of Bojangles.
Okay.
But at that point in time, Mike had referenced when I was thinking about what's next for next year, what I wanted to do with Galaxy or moving forward. And he randomly said, "Oh man, you know what? You should do that Bojangles thing."
Okay.
And I said, I took a second. I took a step back. Mike doesn't say things. Sometimes he'll say things, and it might not register with you right away.
Right.
But I think what he realized is that I was set up to go do my own thing and build my own business, and that it was time. And I remember over the years, Mike Nova would tell me, hey, look, at some point you got to jump, right? And, in my mind, I thought my jump was city to Galaxy, but in actuality, the jump was, you can do this on your own, right?
Beautiful.
You're good enough. You can do this on your own.
So,
and that kind of, that push was like, listen, I came back to him, maybe it was like a month later. I go, Mike, you kind of mentioned this, but as you know, like my brother and I set up this LLC to buy these restaurants. He goes, I know.
Yeah.
Very, very intuitive, very in tune with everything without leading on to that. But he goes, I said, well, I want to launch my own business. I would love your support, in supporting me to launch my business. And he goes, you got it. He's like, absolutely, go do it.
Oh,
so I'm like,
that is fantastic.
I'm like looking around, I'm like, did you just say yes?
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like,
that is fantastic.
So we went. So I went from Galaxy Digital to Galaxy IP. Okay. Which is the family office side, and I started to really lay the foundation for Naka Capital Partners, and
sure.
This is January, February of 2020. Yeah. This year, and now we hit this brick wall of an environment. Right. Right as I'm trying to get this business off the ground.
Right.
We go through conversations with corporate, Bojangles corporate, to buy these restaurants, and COVID hits.
Right.
And I'm literally sitting there thinking to myself, oh my God, this is either a lot of opportunity or a complete disaster. Yeah. And it reminded me of the time when I made the transition from being in Cleveland, Ohio to New York City. Right. In 2009, where I'm sitting there, my wife and I, we had a house in Cleveland in Mayfield Heights. Sure. I'm making good money, but not New York money. Right. And I make the decision to go out to New York, and I'm like, this is either going to be the worst decision or the best decision of my life.
Right.
And that was the bottom of 2009.
Wow.
And I'm sitting here, we're it's November, heading to December. It's the holiday times, and it's been a crazy, 7-month stretch or so. And we're like, when you build your own business, you put everything into it, blood,
sure.
sweat, tears,
no
every
doubt.
last cent.
Yep.
We're fighting for it right now, and I'm literally, I had this conversation with my wife. I said, listen, honey, I say, we have to think about, if I'm buying these businesses in South Carolina, what's best for our family. And she said, well, to be honest, if you're going to travel and we're going to take this next step, and my wife has a career of her own.
Right.
She works at PNC Bank, and she has for really since, I guess it was when National City was bought by PNC. So technically National City previous to that. And she goes, you know what, it's maybe it's time. And I was like, time to move home, huh?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah. So we haven't really told many people, but we're literally in the process. Given the environment, we listed our house in New Jersey and sold. And we're packing up as we speak. And on December 5th, we will be back in Cleveland, Ohio.
Welcome back. And when you come back in town, I want you to address my Chagrin Falls wrestling team.
Listen, I have no problem stepping into the room and throwing some guys around.
I love it. Well, Yoshi,
it's that transition, and this is that moment that I've had over many years of my career where you're sitting here and saying, you know what, should be better, and you get that fire, you get that fire inside, and I've been through a lot of things in life, and
of course,
I'm just very fortunate that I have an amazing wife, my high school sweetheart.
Shout out to Amy, baby. Shout out to Amy.
Right.
And so this is so you.
And I got 3 amazing kids.
Awesome.
I have a son now, which was, there's Arabella, who's 9. There's Penelope, that's 6, and there's Axel, who's oops.
Love it. Love it. Axel, beautiful.
But I have a boy, much to the odds of a wrestler having a boy. I'm moving home.
Well,
moving home.
We are welcoming you with open arms. The next chapter of Yoshi Nakamura's life. We are excited to see what that brings, and we just want to wrap it up. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I could talk to you for forever, but we gotta wrap this up. And I want you to leave the audience, Yoshi, with today we need to be courageous. One or two messages of courage and creativity moving forward through this time of COVID.
That's right. To everybody out there, thoughts and prayers to everybody. Super important. We're all stronger together, not separate. And so, whether that's family or friends, I think a lot of people have done an amazing job of leaning in, but that gets hard. And whether it's financially or emotionally or spiritually, when you see somebody who is, maybe not 100%, you got to lean into them and pay that forward. And I promise you that good karma and that goodwill will pay it forward to the next 5 people and the next 5 people. And, we can exponentially make things better by starting with us first individually. And, but together we are much stronger holistically than any one person, one political leader, one government, one financial institution, because we are who we are in the United States of America, and we're pretty resilient people. And I will say, for those who are building businesses, who have built businesses and the up and coming generation, it's okay to dream big, and if you're in that mentality that you can't quite see the vision or the mosaic or the picture or the goal, it's okay.
Yeah.
In principle, you just have to get started. And for me and for what I'm going through right now, I'm super fired up. Launching my own business with my family, moving back to Cleveland to be closer to family. We're at the cusp of, in my mind, something great, and it doesn't get easier. It gets harder, and it's at that point where it's the hardest that you really bear down and it's like stepping on the line, in the third period, and you're exhausted, and you went hard for the first two, and it's tied.
Yep.
And Coach Rivers would say, you got just break them, just keep pushing, they'll break, keep pushing.
Right.
You can do this. You can take your intensity, your mentality to another level, and you can get there. Because the one thing that wrestlers are resilient.
Yes, they
are.
Right.
Stubborn, but resilient.
Right.
And that through the toughest of times, you can succeed. And don't ever give up. I know it feels like it, but we are a community of people that are strong, resilient, and endure many, many things. And again, you can get there, and you don't realize how close you are. So don't give up. Just keep pushing forward. And again, thoughts, prayers to everybody out there. I'm excited that I'm coming home.
We love it. We love it, Yoshi, and we can't wait for the whole Nakamura family to be together in Northeast Ohio. And we really, really appreciate that message of paying it forward, because the ripple effect is dynamic and exponential. Thank you so much for appearing on Blood Time and sharing your wonderful stories and your message from both your dad and your mom and your beautiful wife and kids. We wish you the best. Love to you and your family. We are all blood. Thank you, Yoshi.
Thank you.
Coach Cimarroni here for Blood Time. We are all blood. God bless. I want to leave you with this thought of the day, with a nod to Kid Rock. Go to where you are celebrated, not tolerated.
Hi, this is Lee Kemp. You've just heard an episode of Blood Time. Check out all the episodes at maverickpodcasting.com.